Hello, I'm Marcus Railton, and this is the ScotsCare podcast. ScotsCare is the only charity dedicated to helping disadvantaged Scots in London through a range of support, including mental health therapy, financial grants, advocacy, sheltered housing for older Scots, job coaching, social events, befriending, and support for children and families. The charity's been running for 400 years to help break the cycle of poverty experienced by some Scots. In this series of the ScotsCare podcast, I'll be chatting to celebrities and supporters of the charity that have also forged a life in the capital away from home, and about the ups and downs that can bring. On the podcast this week is Fiona McKinnon, a mental wellness expert who develops products and exercises that reduce stress and reinforce the benefits of mindfulness. Mental health has never been more important than it is now in our 24/7, ridiculously fast-paced world, and I'm delighted to be chatting with her today.
ScotsCare, working to make London life better for Scots and their children.
Hi Fiona.
Hello Marcus, lovely to meet you.
You too. Can I start with a quote from yourself, which I really liked? It kind of really resonated with me. We've never been more educated, stimulated, and exhausted. And I completely agree. Is the world becoming more stressful?
It certainly feels that way, doesn't it? That is basically the start of our mission and why moments actually exist is that exact line that you just quoted. And it's the truth. If you think about it, technology is a wonderful thing, but it's also meant that we are able to be constantly on call. There's something literally in our hands that is demanding our attention be taken away from what we're doing at that very moment and transported somewhere else. So in short, yes, I believe that is true, that we've never been more connected, which is a wonderful thing, but also distracted and exhausted.
I'm not that old. I turned 50 this year. But I do remember I used to go to work. And, this is when we had email and stuff. But once I left work, I would leave the email and I didn't have a mobile phone and we would leave that behind. And people would not contact me to the next day. But over the last 10 or 15 years, I don't remember the last time I actually switched off. And I don't remember, what I do first in the morning. Is it that I get up and have a wee, or is it that I check my mobile phone?
And I bet the answer to that question is your phone, which I'm sure is for someone else. So I'm a similar age to you, Marcus. I remember going to work. In fact, I went to university without a mobile phone and studied. And I went to this thing called the library and read books, which I'm sure is a foreign concept to many now as well. But I can actually remember the smartphone and that moment of feeling the change of not just having a phone and being able to answer email, but to your point, having something that opened up everything to you in terms of communication in the palm of your hand. And interestingly, when I felt it and when I noticed it was not through work, but it was in the relationship that I was in. And I realized that I'd lost the other person, because now you have a reason to be distracted. Even when you're sitting on the sofa with someone next to you, you're not fully present. And it's not just about how we use technology in our workplace, but it's also how much it's distracted us from our life and living as well.
I think we're all so guilty of that. I am guilty of it. My wife is even more guilty of it. If we watch Netflix at night, I must spend 40% of the time rewinding because she's missed something because she's on her phone. And I think it's just the way we live. And I tried to sit down with my 13-year-old boy to watch a football match. It was last year. And
I hope it wasn't Scotland. That probably deserves to be that with something else in it.
Well, he thinks of himself as English, so let's not. I just can't. That's okay. Another thing completely. But we sat down, and within 20 minutes, his phone was out, and he was on the phone, and he was completely and utterly distracted. I do worry that my kids have no focus anymore because of this. That's always been pulled away from them to do something else and something short as well.
Well, here's the news flash, everybody. Multitasking is not a thing. It's not possible for us to be fully engaged in more than one thing in a moment. And research shows that even having your phone next to you, never mind picking it up, distracts you for 23 minutes from what you were doing previously on average. So if you're just constantly picking up the phone, it means you're never fully present in the task at hand. And that is what mindfulness and what we do is really all about. Mindfulness is simply about being 100% focused in the task at hand, without judgment and without distraction.
This isn't a new thing, though, is it, Fiona? Because when we look at, I went to Glasgow University as well, and I did philosophy, which was hugely useful going forward. Opened up a world of jobs to me. But I remember reading Plato at university, and he was talking about the theory of the forms. He was talking about just one thing. That's what man needs, as in humans, not just man. Yeah. Man needs one thing to concentrate, and they will be happy. And we've obviously been talking about this for thousands of years.
That's the thing. Everything that we do, and I have personally felt has helped me, is centuries old, thousands of years old. It's proven, it's scientific, because it's how our minds and bodies actually work. We've not reinvented some way. We have a nervous system, and it is triggered by different things, and it's soothed by different techniques. And one of our most powerful things that we own is our breath. And just being able to take conscious breaths calms our nervous system. It stimulates our vagus nerve. It supports our digestion. It supports our brain function. And by learning to do these simple things, which we're already pre-programmed and wired to do, but we've just forgotten how to do them, or we've become too distracted, and really understanding how our bodies feel, then that's where we can get into, what is dis-ease, i.e. we're not making it easy for ourselves. And that's where we can create physical as well as mental problems within our own systems and our own bodies.
Now, you spent a lot of years at the sharp end of business. You were looking at other people's businesses, working for your own business, working for big corporates. What was the crunch point for you where you said, I'm not going to do this anymore? So
I'd say there's a number of different things, and they slowly built up over time. So for me, I was in the online advertising and media world for over 20 years. It was called new media back in the day when I joined it, because internet advertising was a newfangled thing. And I primarily worked for startups. So there was a mentality of, you roll your sleeves up and you get on with whatever you need to do to make the business succeed. I was very fortunate to have global roles. So my time was spent on airplanes more than anything else. And it got to the point where I just was always on, basically, just as we were saying there. And I didn't have the wherewithal to understand how that was physically and mentally impacting me. I didn't know the warning signs. Burnout was not something that you talked about. It was something that was seen to be avoided at all costs. So you covered it up and you worked extra hours. And there's also a little bit, not the subject for today, but there was a bit of, that kind of only female at the table, needing to be seen to be strong and just getting on with things. And after, I would say, probably 4 or 5 years of pushing myself to the limits, I had a physical and mental breakdown.
Were you a worrier while this was going on, or have you? I mean, I've worried from since I was a little child. If I've got nothing to worry about, I worry about the fact I've got nothing to worry about. So, were you worrying and coping, or were you coping and then you went off a cliff?
No, my default setting was fear, was worrying, was needing to be perfect, was doing anything I could to be accepted. But within that, I was compromising my own personal boundaries and my own personal happiness. And I just didn't know how to express any of that. So I would say fear, which then manifested itself in being angry about things. I had a great sense of injustice about the world and unfairness, which created a lot of anxiety and stress within my system.
Do you think anger gets stored up in your body? Do you think it's one of these things that kind of gets pushed down further and further until it just comes out? Anger or grief?
Absolutely. And interestingly, grief and anger find themselves in the body in very similar places, which is in your lungs, in your chest. And when you start to tune into how your body's feeling, your body can really tell you which emotion it is that you are feeling at that time. And one of the concerns, just going back quickly, Marcus, to technology, one of the concerns I really have about the increase in technology-driven well-being apps and wearable technology is that we're looking at our watches and our phones to understand how we're feeling. And we're not really using our own guidance system, which is our body, to go, hang on a minute, what is this that I'm feeling? And is what, and more importantly, why? Why am I feeling angry? Why am I feeling anxious? Why am I, and that excitement and anxiety are very closely linked and connected emotions and how we feel them in our bodies. So having a piece of technology tell you that you're having an emotional reaction is not as helpful as us being able to feel it for ourselves and question, okay, hang on a minute, why am I feeling this way? And that's my real worry, that we become over-reliant on technology to say, hey, Fee, you've had a bad night's sleep. And then I immediately start my day going, oh God, I've had a bad night's sleep. What does that mean for the rest of my day? Rather than me saying, oh, I'm a bit tired today. What can I do to help protect myself? Do I need to do a little bit less? Shall I go for a walk? Shall I do a bit of meditation? What might be helpful? Maybe I'll just have a cup of coffee, but I think that over-reliance on technology and understanding our emotional reaction is a worrying trend, I see.
Yeah, we're absolutely obsessed by data. Everyone's obsessed by data all the time, recording their existence and recording data, even to the point where, I go out cycling quite a lot, and a lot of the guys I cycle with who are the same age as me, they have these computers on the bike that record how many miles they do and how many calories they do and how many watts they burn. And they're 50-year-old blokes. They're never going to ride the Tour de France. I do not know why why don't they just look around and stop looking down at these tiny computers full of useless data?
ScotsCare, supporting Scots away from home in London.
The World Health Organization states that 1 in 4 of us will have mental health issues in our lifetime. 25%, that's an unacceptable statistic, surely.
Yes, it is. And actually, I hate to say it, but I'm surprised it's not higher. Because it depends what you mean by mental health. Obviously, there's that more serious mental health issues, but there's also the life-changing issues that are caused by daily stress and anxiety and not being able to manage that, which then can manifest itself into being those more serious conditions. So actually, I'm surprised it's not higher, because it's thought that 3/4 of us suffer from workplace stress and anxiety every year.
So that's interesting, isn't it? So when you work for your company and you go into corporates and you address these issues, first of all, I wanted to ask you, do you see like an age split, or do you see a gender split? Are females more stressed than males? Are young people, with all this economic uncertainty that's going on at the moment, are they more terrified of the world going forward than older people who may have a mortgage and are more settled?
So first, I would say that it's important we don't see it as a competition. If one person's more stressed than another, everybody's journey and emotions are valid in their own right. So I don't think it's a case of saying that there's one more than another. What I would say is that women are more likely to talk about their emotional well-being. They're more likely to talk amongst friends. They're more likely to be open and vulnerable than men. So the male statistic may well be hiding more men that are actually feeling these emotions. They're just less likely to express them or to recognize that is what they're going through. And when you look at the statistics around the biggest cause of death in men, particularly around the ages of 40 and 50, it's suicide. And there's no denying that it's a huge, huge issue in society today, and is only getting worse. I would also say, and something very close to my heart, is that there's also a real issue around addiction and alcoholism in that older age bracket, again, around the sort of 40 and 50-year-olds, where that inability to self-regulate that emotion from a a mindset perspective, then, is hidden by addictions.
I think drinking too much booze is very easy to justify. I think I do it on occasion. I say, oh, do you know what? I've had a tough work day, or the kids are killing me, and I will just go to the fridge and reach for a beer. And, I also think I'm predisposed to it being, my family and being Scottish, but, booze is a real problem, isn't it?
It really is. And I'm 3 years sober, which I'm that and practicing meditation, and the two things are very linked, have literally changed my life and have changed my outlook. And I'm very passionate about supporting people who are sober curious. It's not about stopping if you don't have a problem. That's not at all what I'm saying. It's just about understanding why you might be drinking. Is it covering something up? Is it covering up anxiety, stress, and an inability, unhappiness at work, in relationships? There tends to be a trigger and a reason behind those behaviors. And, addiction can be in other things as well. It's not just about booze. It can be in exercise. It can be, in gaming. If you're looking at kids, there can be other things that cause that addictive behavior, but it's usually because of a mindset shift or something that, you're looking to occupy your mind.
When you gave up booze, was it a case of you felt you were drinking too much, or did you think, do you know what, I need just to get healthy? Or what was the kind of the catalyst for it?
Through meditation, through becoming more mindful, through understanding my body and my mind better through those practices, I realized that a big reason, if I go back to the aforementioned stress and burnout at work, I realized that the online advertising industry, Mad Men, the booze culture, the 24/7, the drinking and the drinking to excess was a big part of my breakdown, and my fear and anxiety and ability to kind of feel in control was being controlled by drinking to excess. And from the outside, people wouldn't have thought I was an alcoholic, but I started to piece together and appreciate the connection between my binge drinking, between my ability not to control it, the desire to escape kind of reality in those moments, and also using it as a social crux was not serving me. And I made a conscious decision that I needed to remove that anxiety from my life, and that started with stopping, basically.
And do you sleep better now?
Oh yes.
I think alcohol does that. I know even 1 or 2 beers, it really kills I don't sleep very well, but 1 or 2 beers and it just, I'm awake off and on the whole night. It's not good.
That was a decision I used to have to make. Will I have a drink or will I sleep? I mean, how crazy is that?
And you still drink coffee?
Oh yes, that's my one vice. I need my coffee in the morning. I love it.
Yeah, I try these days to get up and not go straight to the coffee machine. I do try to have a glass of water or just move around a bit, in order to just kind of hydrate my body a little bit before I get on the coffee. And I have tried to just limit it, because I was up at 4 or 5 cups a day and then feeling jittery and not sleeping, so.
Can I come back to the question that you asked about age? Because I do think it's really important to recognise our teenagers and our younger generation as well, and how much COVID has impacted them, and that lockdown, and also to recognise that their lives are different to when we grew up, and technology and connection and social media and comparison, and also the openness about talking about mental health are very different from growing up in the 70s and 80s. And I do think that there is additional pressures and anxieties and a real lack of one-to-one connection that generation are missing, that is creating a real swell of mental health issues right now.
I mean, I have rose-tinted glasses, but do you think it's a simplicity that they're missing?
I mean, I'd love to say that, I'd love to see everybody just put down their phones and go out and connect and and run around outside and, kick a ball against a wall and show up when they said they were going to show up and meet people casually and have those incidental conversations, but I don't think we can go back to that. And as I say, technology is not always a bad thing. There's some amazing things that has enabled us to do, and the way that we communicate with each other. So it's not about throwing that out. It's really about learning how to add value from that technology, and not for it to be the way that we live our lives. So I guess, and yes, I'm agreeing with you. Simplicity is at the heart of it, but I don't have the answer to how we get back to that. And it's not a case of going back. We can't. Times are very different. It's about finding a new way for young people to be able to find that human emotional connection, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. And that is what I feel we've lost.
ScotsCare.
And when you go into the workplace, do you find that employers are more open to taking breaks and being mindful and protecting the mental health of the workers? Is there anywhere where you've walked into and thought this culture is still toxic, or is there much more a culture of embracing it?
I would say that there is an increase in awareness for companies to look after the whole person that walks through the door, and not just the person that does the role while they're sitting in the office. Because let's face it, we are the same person, and it's not like we switch our minds off from what's going on at home when we walk through an office door, and vice versa when we leave. So there's definitely an increased responsibility that companies are recognizing, that they support the person and their whole life when they walk into the office. Because let's face it, happier, healthier, more mindful employees make for more productivity, better decisions, and therefore better business. So it's definitely in a company's interest to look after the whole person that walks in the door. However, I believe that there is still a great deal of lip service and not reality and practice that is happening. So companies will say, yes, we have an app that allows our employees to do a meditation in the morning, yet they aren't changing the way that they do performance reviews. Their interview process is very stressful. It's not welcoming. There's no onboarding. There's no ongoing support when someone might have gone through grief, for example, loss of a loved one. So there's a lot to do still in terms of actually impacting cultural change within organizations. But the signs are good that we're starting to have those conversations.
It is. Anything is a good step forward. But I do understand what you mean when you talk about lip service. You know, I used to work for a company, and they had they initiated this thing called 10% time. And it was 10% of your working week. You had to get out of the business and go to an art gallery or go to something else, or go to the cinema and come back with that knowledge, because they believed that what you went away and did would be great for the company. And I remember I did it once. And as soon as I got back into the office, my boss went, "Where have you been? What?" So it was very much lip service, you know.
It's so true. And I worked for a company that actually hired Brene Brown, who I absolutely love, to come and do a talk. Anyone that's listening that hasn't listened to her TED Talk, look it up on Netflix. She talks about vulnerability and shame, and particularly in the workplace. And so she was helping us through a merger, and she talked about being open, and she talked about, you know, how to show up and be vulnerable. And yet the motto or the company culture, of which there were posters all over the organization, was more fun, less fear. Okay. And that's what they genuinely believed was a positive message for the culture of the organization. And I just thought, what does more fun mean? And why is there any fear? And what does less of it mean? And so actually, when I saw that every day, it just made me think, this is a fear-based culture. It had the opposite effect.
Yeah, it's horrible. That's like the phrase compulsory fun. You will have fun today.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. Forced fun.
Looking at the other side of it, I've worked in big companies, and then I go into like my son's school, and sometimes I just think maybe there's too much tolerance, that people are indulged, that we live in a society that's maybe too woke, or that everybody needs a label. Do you think there's a case for saying no, there is nothing wrong here. You just need to knuckle down a little bit.
When I think about that, what comes to mind is the word selfish. And to some people, that can be really triggering. They see it as a bad thing and they think, oh my gosh, I don't want to be labeled selfish. However, if we just think about it for a moment, and it's about putting the self first, if we don't put our own oxygen masks on, we can't really serve others. So if being self-indulgent is me taking a little bit of time in my day to just look after myself so that I show up and I'm kinder to the people around me, I'm better able to be more considered about how I go about my day, then I think that's a great thing. And I think that labeling people selfish for thinking that or seeing that as self-indulgent is a big barrier to why perhaps men in particular don't want to talk about feeling that they need help and support. So I encourage, put your own oxygen mask on first. And that isn't being self-indulgent. That's actually being a better person and showing up more for the people around you.
Something that you said that I read was that you keep a diary. Can you explain to me how that works, how that helps your mental state or your mindfulness?
Yeah, so being Scottish and living in America, I've been told that I needed to journal. I just thought, well, what a lot of rubbish that is. I'm not going to journal. I'm not a 13-year-old girl with a pink diary. How on earth can that help me? But it all started about 10 years ago. And I used to find that when I was traveling, and particularly when I was flying, I would just have these moments where, nobody could contact me. And I just had a little bit of peace and quiet. And I just started to write about whatever came into my head. So there wasn't really any structure to it, but I just found it really helpful. And it's almost cathartic. So if you think about praying, or if you have any kind of faith-based practice that you have, that kind of cathartic moment of being able to say things out loud, you almost then start to unlock something in your mind where you start to problem solve, or it feels a bit of a relief that you've got things out. And I find being able to write was a real way to release that. And then just recently, so during lockdown, I cared for my father who was terminally ill. And I found that writing every day at the end of the day, no matter what time of the day or night that was when I eventually got to bed, if I reframed my day from a place of gratitude, it completely rewired my brain to see things from a different perspective as my head hit the pillow. So that's the practice that I have kept going now for, I guess it must be around 3 years, where every day I just write down, I am grateful for, and I just sort of scan my day in my mind, and I pick out things from having a cup of coffee, speaking to Marcus, sun was shining, just whatever comes to mind. But there's always something you can find in your day to be grateful for, even and especially when circumstances around you might be challenging. And it means that I'm now able to reflect back on that time looking after my dad before he passed from a place of gratitude. And it's just completely changed my outlook. It means that when I end my day, I'm basically seeing it from a good place.
I did want to ask you that. I was wondering, did it help you process your grief? My dad passed away at the start of COVID, and didn't get to see him, didn't get to have a funeral. And I still have days that are massively overwhelming because there was no kind of process done there. There was no such closure. And I just wonder if you writing and being with your dad helped you to kind of process that grief as you moved on.
I feel it really, really did. And I'm sorry for your loss too. And it was even harder in 2020, because Dad had such a small funeral as well. And we weren't able to get together as a family. And there's just additional challenges there that everyone experienced through that period. But I do feel that writing it down really has helped me. And also sharing with people that time, that grief, and being open about it has really helped me as well, and find a community of people that have that shared experience. And there's different things that work for different people, but in short, yes, it's it was the thing that I believed really helped me just find that peace. You know, being able to say, I'm so grateful for the time we have with Dad. I'm so grateful to be there with him. And it really does help rewire your brain to a more positive place, because we're predisposed. I can't speak today. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, predisposed. Yeah.
Thank you very much. To think negatively. 80% of our daily thoughts are negative. So if I can just rewire a few of those every day from a more positive perspective, I'm helping build my brain every day.
Now, on social media, you do a lot of breathing exercises that you put up there, and I follow them, and they genuinely work with me. Now, we're almost out of time, but I just wondered, is there something you could do for us now? Just give us 1 minute, 90 seconds of peace to help us at the end of this interview.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said up front, the biggest powerful superpower we have is our breath, because it helps calm our nervous system and just gives us that window to think and to move forward. And all we have to do is learn to breathe into our bellies and out. So we're directing our breath in and out of our diaphragm. It immediately gives us more oxygen. It opens our chest and is really kind of creates a sense of calm. And the other thing is that we don't have to take big, huge, deep gulps of breath. We can do this really softly and quietly. And actually that can create a more powerful inward thinking moment. So let's just do this now. We'll just breathe in for the count of 5, out for the count of 5, just for 3 rounds of breath. And I'll just guide you through that. And I find if you close your eyes, it again just sends a little message to your body that it's time just to take a moment. So if you're ready, close your eyes. And let's just breathe out fully, letting our belly drop back down. And then as we breathe in, 2, 3, push your belly out. And exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, pushing your belly out as that breath moves down through your lungs. And exhale, let it all go, dropping your shoulders and your belly falling down. Breathe in, softly, quietly. And breathe out. And keeping your eyes closed, just let your breath return back to normal. And quietly and softly open your eyes and just appreciate that short moment of calm you can create in your body and your mind.
Fiona, thank you for that. Thank you. Will you come back again? Because I've got about 200 more questions for you.
I would absolutely love to, because I've got about 200 other things that I could talk about too.
Fiona McKinnon, thanks for being on the ScotsCare podcast today.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
ScotsCare, for Scots in London in need of support, financial, practical, or emotional.